guys, Andrew Berg here. Have you ever listened to an improvised jazz solo and recognized part of it from something else? Quoting is such a fun way to communicate an idea with your audience and fellow musicians while still improvising your solo. And I've always really enjoyed doing these quotes during performances around the holidays. But before I get into this, please take a second to like and subscribe so we can feed the YouTube algorithm. Okay, so before we actually get into the songs, I want to take a second to go through what quoting is and why we would even want to do it. Basically, quoting is when you're playing an improvised solo and you play a section of another song in that solo. It doesn't really matter what that other song is, as long as it fits into the chord progression that you're improvising over. And typically they're pretty short, anywhere from a couple counts to a couple measures. My rule of thumb is always to play the least number of notes needed to be able to recognize the song it is that you are quoting in your solo. So basically, get in and get out again. Also, it never hurts to vary the rhythm a bit, so it feels more natural and blends with the rest of your solo. Okay, so the question of why we can or should quote is really entirely subjective. In general, you have three audiences you can quote for: yourself, your band, and your actual audience. Quoting for yourself can be something as simple as playing a really cool line you heard once and just working it into your improvised solo, just because it sounds cool. As long as it sounds good, no one really has to know that you're quoting, just that it sounds cool. Quoting for your band is probably the most enjoyable one for me. All this is just playing something that's like an inside joke that the rest of your band will get. And again, it doesn't really matter who gets the joke as long as it sounds good. Back in high school, I used to try quoting some of our fight songs or part of our marching band show just because the band thought it was funny. And that's really the only reason I needed. They found it entertaining, so success. Okay, so the last audience you can quote for is the actual audience. If you are quoting for them, you want it to be obvious. This is where holiday songs come into play. In college, when we had our end of fall semester concert, we usually only had 1 to 2 holiday songs out of our 5 to 6 song set. So to keep the audience entertained during some of these non-holiday songs, it was always kind of fun to throw in a Jingle Bells or Sleigh Ride quote. People who don't love jazz can sometimes lose interest when they don't understand what they're hearing. So throwing in that kind of a quote here and there can help keep them engaged and entertained. Okay, on to the songs you can quote. We'll start with the good old classic, Jingle Bells. Here's the basic melody of Jingle Bells. This one's pretty easy for the most part, and you can vary the rhythm a bit depending on where you want it to go. So I want to take this melody, and let's say I want to put it in this chord progression. By the way, I'm not just choosing random chords that I know will work with this. If you watch until the end of the video, you'll see what I'm doing with this and why I'm choosing these chords. The first thing we have to do is figure out what key to transpose this into. It's usually easiest to just look at what notes occur most often and on the downbeats and go from there. This one has a lot of B's. The easiest way to manipulate this is just to try making this the root of the A minor 7 chord and see where the rest of the notes end up. Alright, well that worked out conveniently well. But let's see if we can make it more interesting. A lot of the times, the roots of the chord are the most bland sounding. So I want to try starting on a 3rd, 5th, or 7th instead. The 3rds and 7ths are the most colorful notes, so we'll start there. If we have it start on the 3rd of A minor, which is C, we can see we're going to have a clashing note in the F major 7 chord. Let's try starting on the 7th, which is G, instead. Again, we have a problem with that F major 7 chord. Okay, how about starting on the 5th of A minor 7, E? This one works! Perfect! The next step when improvising is to make sure we enter and exit the quote fluidly. There are really an infinite number of ways to do this, but let me play a little bit for you and I'll show you how I might approach it in a solo. I'll play a little bit of a lead-in, I'll play the quote, and then I'll exit it again. Okay, on to the next one. Let's go with Up on the Housetop. This one can be a bit shorter because it's easier to recognize, but we probably can't vary the rhythm quite as much if you still want it to be recognizable. We'll do the same thing as last time. Let's take this melody and let's use these chords. Well, we got lucky. This one already works pretty nicely over these chords. Let me improvise a little leading up to it, then I'll play the quote, and then I'll get back out of it again. And a reminder that we ideally want the transition before and after to be as seamless as possible. The third song I've got for you is Hark the Herald Angels Sing. This will be another short one, just 2 measures. Starting with the melody, it looks like we have a lot of Fs, As, and a C. This is pretty lucky since those are the 1, 3, and 5 of an F major chord. So it should be pretty easy to manipulate and fit into some chords. We're going to use these chords. Immediately I can see that it kind of works. The only really questionable note here is the F over the A minor 7. It would work and would sound pretty cool, but let's just explore really quick and see if we can find any others that fit a little more exactly with the chords, just in case there are any extensions on the A minor 7 that we aren't aware of that could mess with it a bit. Okay, so that last one started on the 3rd, but since that first interval is a 4th, let's try starting on the 7th instead. I'll show you why. Yes! So the problem is that if we want to keep all the strong notes as chord tones, it's tricky since there's a 3rd between chord tones. 1st to 3rd, 3rd to 5th, etc. The exception is the 7th. The 7th is a step lower than the root and a 4th lower than the 3rd, which is perfect for this. Cool, same as before, I'll improvise leading up to it, play the quote, and improvise out of it. Two more. Next one is Deck the Halls. This one I'm going to choose to do 4 measures again because I think it needs it for you to fully recognize it sometimes. And because of that, it'll probably be the hardest one to fit into the chords yet. Here's the melody, and here are the chords. For the sake of time during this trial and error process, I'll go ahead and show you where I want to transpose it to. This got us pretty close, especially when you consider how long of a quote it is. I think the melody is strong enough to where it should work pretty well. Let's hear it then and see how well it works. Alright, I think that worked. On to the last one, the first Noel. The first thing that might strike you is the melody is in 3/4 and the chords and song we're putting it into are in 4/4. Well, it's a much easier change than you think. Again, this will be done while improvising, and I've already shown you how you can mess with the rhythms in the solo, so let's just change it to this for our melody instead. Now to fit them into the chords. And I'm going to choose this to transpose it to. I've been through every variation and this one gets the closest. Unfortunately, it's not perfect. There's a C sharp over this A minor 7 chord, which just doesn't really work. It is a lead tone to the next measure, so we could argue it kind of works, but I'm going to show you a much easier solution. Just change the rhythm on the melody. We're going to improvise it anyway, so just make sure that C sharp doesn't land in the A minor 7 chord. Boom. Easy. Alright, well let's hear how that sounds. Awesome. If you were to be doing this during a performance, there are 2 ways you can approach this. The first is the correct way. Memorize all of these songs in every key and only play them during your solos when they feel really natural. And then just trust your improvisational skills to help you pick the right key in the moment. It sounds really hard, but after a while of just really focused practicing, you can really get it to feel as natural as just improvising anything else you would play. This other way might be blasphemous, but just plan it out. Honestly, just plan out what quote you want to play in the song you want to play, memorize it in that key that works with those chord progressions, and then just improvise into and out of it to make it sound extremely natural. And really practice improvising different ways to get in and out of the quote, because trust me, a quote that sounds forced or flubbed just doesn't sound good at all. I told you that there's a reason I was picking the chords that I put the quotes into and that they weren't just random. Those are actually all chords from God Rest Ye Merry Gentlemen. So in case you haven't guessed it yet, I'm now going to do an improvised solo and I'm going to incorporate all 5 of those quotes. My aim is to put these quotes in those spots and improvise my way into and out of each of those quotes. Realistically, you wouldn't play this many quotes in one solo, especially one this short, but for the sake of the video, let's do this. I'm going to play the melody first, then I'm going to improvise my way to each of these planned quote placements, and then I'll be playing the melody again at the end. Thanks for watching. My name is Andrew Berg, and if you like this video and want to learn more about music, I post once a week covering everything from improvisation to practical practice tips to in-depth musical discussions. Please comment down below if you have any questions or suggestions for me, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you get notified the next time I post. One last thing. Practice.